Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll start in about a minute. All right, looks like we're going to begin. Hi, my name is Laura MacDonald, and I'm the Director of Professional Learning here at NCEA. Thank you for joining us for Homemakers Empowering Youth and Young Adults for Creation Care. Before we begin, there's three quick housekeeping rules here for you. First of all, we're recording, so everyone behave. Secondly, if you have questions during the presentation, use the Q&A box. We use it just like a chat here. Our presenters will be monitoring it, and they have left time at the end for questions, so you may ask them then as well, but use that Q&A box. And thirdly, at the end of this session, we will share a link in the chat box for an online survey. We value your feedback. We also share this feedback with our presenters so they know how they did. And it's really useful for us to know what you need and what you want here at NCEA. If you complete that and share your email, we will send you a certificate of completion that you can have to show that you attended this webinar. So today, our speakers are Kayla Jacobs, Diana Marin, and we have Vincent O'Leary joining us. But before we begin, let's begin as we begin all things in prayer. So please join me. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, our creator of heaven and earth, how blessed we are to be surrounded by the beauty of your creation. We lift our prayer of gratitude as we see the stars of heaven and the beauty of the sunset. We are amazed by the sea and the waterways and all they are in them. We are enchanted by the flowers and trees which are clothed by you. We are awed by all the animals you created. For the beauty of the earth, the mountains and the valleys, the sun and the moon, we give you praise. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And now, Kayla Jacobs.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here with you today. My name is Kayla Jacobs, and I am the Program Manager for Youth Mobilization for the Catholic Climate Covenant. So I work primarily with high school students. The Covenant was founded in 2006 to address growing ecological awareness and the need to implement Catholic social teaching on ecology within the U.S. Catholic Church. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, the USCCB, helped form the Covenant, and today we work to inspire and equip Catholic schools, parishes, dioceses, etc., to care for creation and also implement Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si. So today we're going to be sharing with you about one of our newer programs with the Covenant. It's called Homemakers, and Homemakers is a 10-session integral ecology curriculum that was created by young adults for the use of young adults and also youth. As many of you might have seen in your own work with young people, the climate crisis is of particular concern for Generation Z and millennials. For instance, 1 in 3 people ages 18 to 29 say that climate change is a factor while considering having children. Many of the young people that I work with have expressed concern or a sense of anxiety because of the climate crisis. So because of these reasons and many more, Homemakers came about. So Homemakers came about through the efforts of a group of about 30 young adults in partnership with the Catholic Climate Covenant. And they desire to create a space for youth and young adults to build community, to learn and do more about the climate crisis, and then also to activate our churches and our schools around caring for God's creation and implementing Laudato Si. Homemakers underwent 3 phases. It all started in February 2021, and the first phase was just the development phase. So we had that working group of 30 young adults. They created a first draft. It went through some editing. It was reviewed by experts, went through some more editing. It was also vetted and approved by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. So that was really awesome to have that stamp of approval as well. The second phase was our pilot program, which Vincent will share more about in a bit. And our pilot program ended in February, this past February. And Diana, maybe you can share numbers on how many places piloted. But from that pilot program, we received a lot of great feedback, a lot of helpful feedback that we then were able to tweak the curriculum a bit from all of the thoughts that were shared with us. And then we officially launched Homemakers this past Earth Day. So now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Diana, who will get more into the details of Homemakers and how it works.
Thanks, Kayla. Thanks for that overview. Homemakers, like Kayla mentioned, my name is Diana Marin. I work with Catholic Climate Covenant as the Young Adult Mobilization Program Manager. And today we'll sort of dive deep into Homemakers and also hear from Vincent, one of the pilot facilitators, in a little bit. The goal is basically to show you what's possible, what's capable with Homemakers, how you could bring this into your classroom. And Homemakers is a digital resource. It's we have slide decks and facilitation tools. And so since it's so visually heavy, I'm going to share my screen so that we can dive deep in that together. All right, so like Kayla mentioned, Homemakers consists of 11 sessions for the high school audience. These are some of the images that are part of the program. We heavily made it very visually appealing and partnered with some artists who, Gracie Morbitzer is one of the artists who provides images or depictions of modern day saints. So these are some saints that you can see just on our screen, St. Clare and St. Francis, also Nicholas Black Elk. And we have flyers and other digital resources for you to get a sense of what Homemakers is about. The curriculum spans 3 tracks. There's a spirituality and ecology section, a sustainability and simple living, and social action and civic love. The curriculum as a whole, you can utilize it incorporating all of these tracks. So that would be the sort of full track. If you do that, then it'll be the full 10, 11 sessions. Or you could utilize one of the tracks individually. Spirituality and ecology delves deep into reflection, scripture, rooting in Indigenous wisdom. Sustainability likewise still incorporates those spiritual reflections, but the emphasis is on the 101 on climate science. We really go into sort of basics for how to engage, how to understand the climate crisis, and to begin to move towards individual actions. The social action and civic love track delves into that even more. So this is a 101 on community organizing. We leverage off of the prior tracks of spirituality, ecology, sustainability, and simple living. And we bring to the classroom the question of what can we do together, knowing that with the knowledge that we have around how our faith inspires us to action, and also how this climate crisis inspires us to action. So it's very, that track in particular is very action oriented and sort of goes off of the building blocks of what can be done in the local community around engaging in climate action efforts. So these are the 3 tracks. Again, it could be utilized individually or as a whole. I'll go into a little bit more about what these tracks look like. Well, let's see here. So how do you access Homemakers? You'll go onto catholicClimateCovenant.org/Homemakers, and you'll find this page. We have an FAQ with a little bit more detail around how Homemakers came to be and whether it's a good fit for your community. And then how to access Homemakers, that's the link you'll click. You'll provide your contact information and we'll email you a copy of the curriculum. We also offer facilitator training, and a plug, we have one tomorrow. Tomorrow evening, you're welcome to join. We'll go into a little bit of how to implement Homemakers in your setting, and we'll explore and answer questions around that. But so if you are looking to access Homemakers, you click that link and it'll bring you to this email. I'll note during the course of modifying Homemakers after the pilot program, we noticed that it would be really helpful for communities to have various audiences. That's one of the main feedbacks that we received. And so we've created or modified the curriculum based for use in high school, college settings, and also in small group settings. Today, obviously, we're going to focus on high schools, but there are modifications of the curriculum that you all have access to. And let's see here. So the curriculum as a whole is stored on Google Drive. And what you'll do is, and let's see, we'll test this out right now. You'll click a link, it'll come to this page. The full program track will list out all of the sessions. This is the recommended order to go through. Of course, it can be modified. If you go back to the main page, we break it down to by the tracks itself. We also include participant handouts. These are the activities that accompany each of the sessions. For example, a selection of papal passages on creation care is one of the activities that we go through in one of the sessions. So that is also available for you all to see. Not every activity is within all of the sessions. You'll sort of note because of the modifications that I mentioned earlier, for time constraints, there are some activities that are that were placed in other of the tracks, so that maybe aren't available for high school, but still you can still access all of these activities here and see what's available. All right, so with that, I will lead us into one of the tracks. The very first session is on the introduction to Homemakers. So I'll sort of breeze through what this session looks like for you all to get a sense of how Homemakers runs. Like I mentioned, it's highly visual. We offer these presentations, and I should mention as well, we also offer, I'll come back here, we also offer the introduction, a facilitator's guide that accompanies the introduction. So I'm just going to backtrack. We go here to introduction. You'll see the slide deck. That's what I had just pulled up. And we also have this facilitator guide that accompanies each of the slides to the slide deck. So we'll begin with, on this facilitator guide, it sort of walks you through the entire session, naming the objectives, naming the materials that you'll need, any follow-up that you might want to bring to the class. And then we also offer not only a summary of the slide, but then also potential wording for you to be able to use to share with in your classroom. So, and we also offer the amount of time to expect to spend on each of these activities. And I'll just scroll through this for you, but it'll accompany each of the slides that we'll go to in just a second. So here we are back at Homemakers. I'll run through this session with you. Every session begins with naming where we are within the Homemakers journey. This particular session, which starts off all 3 tracks, names the story of how Homemakers came to be, which, as Kayla mentioned, began with a working group of 30 young adults. And the name itself was inspired by Elia Delio, who says that to follow Jesus is to be a homemaker, to bring love to the world and to new being in life. So I'll sort of breeze through this. This is a picture of some of the young adults who were part of the curriculum creation, just honoring their efforts. Each session incorporates prayer and reflection. I'd mentioned the commissions that we worked with Gracie Morbitzer on these depiction of holy saints. Each of the saints also accompanies us on the journey of Homemakers. And so there's prayer and there's also learning that we offer about each of the saints and how they can help us reckon with what our faith calls us to do in the light of climate action. The holy mentor accompanying this inaugural session is Saint Kateri Tekakwitha. We share a little bit too about the history of each of, or some more of a background information for each of the saints. So that way too, it's a learning opportunity for, especially for students who might not know who these saints are. Each sessions will also incorporate opening prayers. This particular session, because it's an overview of Homemakers, we give some definition around what is Laudato Si, what is integral ecology, and so this opening activity includes a message from Pope Francis on Laudato Si. And again, some additional context around that. We'll also incorporate pair sharing and small groups. We find that this is really important as part of the Homemakers experience, that it not solely be a talking head, but that students and participants have the opportunity to reflect with one another and individually on what they're learning, and also on their personal experience. So you'll see in this this pair share is talking about how you feel and to name an object of gratitude. We start this particular session in scripture, and so we offer an activity in looking at various sections of Genesis, and we break it into 3 parts and have participants reflect on the creation story. One of our pilot groups, in looking at the creation story, also decided to modify it slightly with an additional activity of learning about the creation story from the Indigenous communities in their local context. So I found that that was also a really great way to continue to root in Indigenous wisdom, and also to have the session be place-based. So you'll see that there's lots of potential for the curriculum to be modified or added to. But we begin with this one, there's the other, and then we imagine that then sort of takes up a full 45 to 50 minute segment of time that's allocated for high school classes. So you'll see our sessions for the high school track tend to include one, maybe two activities. From there, we'll move on to homework. The homework in this track or in this particular session is broken down by track. And for the spirituality and ecology is to research the indigenous stewards of the land in which the community is based. For the sustainability and simple living track, it's to begin prayer and discernment around ecological action. And then social action and civic love is just to note where you don't have access to sustainable options. Not every session will include homework, but most do, and we just find it as an extension to the deepening that's taking place within the session. That was a super quick run through of the session. I just wanted for you all to get a sense of what it's like. We really do provide all of the facilitation materials and the visuals so that it's something that you can either modify or just hit on the ground and go off running with the curriculum. So with that, I believe that's the end. I'm going to turn it over to our colleague, Vincent O'Leary. Kayla had mentioned we had a pilot facilitation program to run through the curriculum in the fall. We had 12 sites and I think 2 to 3 high schools. Vincent's high school was one of them. And a little bit about Vincent, he teaches environmental science, physics, and engineering, and is a STEM coordinator at Central Catholic High School in Wheeling, West Virginia. He holds a BS in environmental science and has been involved in environmental education and climate change research for 15 years, working in zoos, science museums, and federal government agencies before teaching in high school. He participated in the pilot for Homemakers last year and is excited for the transformation it brings to discussions around climate change in the classroom. We're really glad that you joined our pilot, Vincent, and super glad that you're here today as well to talk with us about that Homemakers experience and what you see possible in integrating this in the curriculum. So I'll turn it over to you. Thanks so much, Vincent.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Diana. And for the whole program so far, it's been really exciting to see it. Kind of excited to be part of something just starting out. As you said, yeah, I've been just on my 3rd year teaching now. Last year was the first time I was able to teach environmental science and was looking around for resources to teach, especially bringing in, remembering that about Laudato Si', I remember when I read that when it was first published, it's one of the only kind of readings I had read at the time, and just had left a big impact. And I followed that through with going to college for environmental science and now finding myself teaching it again. I wanted to bring some of that connection back into my classroom. And that's how I kind of stumbled across this work right when the pilot was getting started. At the time, it was billed as like a small group discussion. I think 2 hours long was the target. And I kind of just snuck in and was going to use it for high school. And it worked really well. I didn't really know what to expect going in. It did take a lot of modifications to kind of get those 2 hours down into our classes. We have about 75 minutes for our classes. I had usually about 15 students in my class. But I found it worked pretty well. We usually did them on Fridays. It was kind of like a wrap up for the week. At times they tied really well into our content area. At other times it was just a nice way to kind of step back, reflect, work in those ideas of climate change, of our faith in all the other content. I'm excited to see the lessons this year. I found the pilot was really instructive, really responsive. Some of the things that I was noticing were issues have already been addressed or already been improved. In the new material, it even says like what slide to use it on. I was writing that by hand already. So just to see how much it's improving, how responsive it is, it's really designed to be used and for the people that are using it. So it's great to see now the specific focus on the different audiences. And I'd also echo what you said about just the images and the content. It really, you could tell, was designed for young people, about young people. It was some of the images of the saints, some of the discussions in the faith I haven't really heard or seen anywhere else. And it was very kind of designed to be engaging for the students. I think the students hadn't seen it before. It piqued their interest in that way. And it was just a great way to kind of step back as a class, work in the meditations, the quiet pauses. It switches a lot between content of videos and small group discussions, worksheets. Some things I would never have done otherwise. Other activities I have done in classes already. Things like reflecting on our personal use of resources, our ecological footprint, what is our responsibility, and then trying to take that further. How can we work outside the classroom? How can we cause bigger changes in environmental science? I especially am excited about this year. We are planning to continue to use the high school resources. And I've talked to our religion teacher in our religion department. We're trying to see ways to bring these lessons to the entire school. So every student in our school takes religion class. Not every student takes environmental science. But I think the way this is designed with the tracks, with the specific focuses, there's ways to kind of break it up and spread it across where we're going to try to share the lessons across our departments. So we aren't quite sure exactly how it's going to work yet. I am planning to kind of take some of the more, as you said, the sustainability and simple living track that's focused heavily on the science content and plan to use those lessons. Last year, they worked really well to kind of emphasize or introduce units that we were going to be doing in the rest of the class. For example, one of them is about holy water. It has a great session and meditation around the cleansing power of water, what water means, as students reflect on their experiences with water, what they think about, and then how we can use water and the ways that it gets wasted or polluted, and what we can do about that, both in our personal lives, school, and the whole community. And I use that actually to wrap up our water unit. We were just finishing up about hurricanes and weather at the time. And it was just kind of a natural way to tie right into the science and bring them into something that we were already talking about. It also worked well to get them to think about not just the weather and the hurricanes, but the connections to climate change, the connections to pollution, and getting us ready for the end of the year when we'd be covering those topics in detail in the spring. I think some of the other units are like talking about the breath of life, about returning dust made of dust, and all of those worked well with discussion systems of the earth and things like that. The other tracks I think will work well with our religion department. So we're planning to kind of break it up where they focus on the tracks of civic action, social love, how we can engage our entire student body in works around environmental science, around recycling, around climate change, and use those lessons as kind of a way to have a class discussion and get them prepared to participate in those school-wide activities. So last year we started doing things, we had an Earth Day cleanup. We had all the religion classes go out and pick trash up throughout the day. And we're planning to expand that and make that more meaningful this year. And these lessons are going to be a big part of that, kind of introducing a little bit more content, a little bit more rigor into that reflection, getting them prepared to really think about what are they doing, why are we doing it. And then for the students that do take environmental science, they'll get to dive a little bit more deep into the actual science and content and use these homemaker tracks to kind of expand and connect that. And I think it's great. It's nice. Each lesson kind of follows the same pattern. So students start to get familiar with it. It becomes kind of a different day. You know, I have students asking, oh, can this be a Homemakers Day? Can we have, I just want to sit here and reflect and be quiet, turn the lights off, and have some discussions and just kind of a break from the content a little bit in a very different format. So it was cool. They got into the rhythm of it. And it works well that way to introduce over time. So we kind of did this throughout the whole fall semester. Again, every Friday, every other Friday, with 10, 11 units, we were able to kind of stretch that out over a whole semester and just kind of bring them in when we needed it. Yeah, I think that was, it was a really good program. I think it worked well. And I'll just say again, the resources are really ready to use. I'm excited to see how the changes just for high school will work better this year. But I always found them really great where you can just really download them the day of and be ready to go into class. I mean, the slides are well done. The facilitator guide really kind of tells you what you should say or be focusing on, which slide, how long you should be taking, and the handouts were ready to go too. So I really felt like you could just download it and bring it right into class with the time. So that was awesome.
Thanks so much for sharing your perspective, Vincent, and also for being part of the Homemakers launch and for your work in bringing this forward. It's really meaningful to be able to hear how you have been implementing it in your classroom.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing, both of you. So now we have built in some time for Q&A. If you have any questions about the anything really about like particulars of homemakers, we're happy to help and answer your questions. So feel free to write them in the Q&A box.
And while folks are doing that, I can ask Vincent maybe a question that I've heard from other teachers, which is, do you have to be like a religion instructor or a science instructor to be able to utilize this materials? Like how much of both is helpful? How would you respond to that, Vincent?
Sure. I mean, I don't have any religion teaching, but I do have a really strong science background. I think the materials are kind of introduce everything you need themselves. They're very good at being self-contained. Most of the stuff, it gets more in depth than I was actually expecting when I started using them. There's a lot of discussions, again, the mentions of indigenous wisdom, the working of the scriptures in, the depth we go into that, and just some of the vocabulary around the climate change, the integral ecology, would probably be a little bit actually higher than I would cover in my like standard environmental class. But I found the lessons were self-contained enough that you kind of got what you needed to participate in the lesson. They introduce things slowly. They always start the same way with kind of, call to prayer, reflection, introducing to the saints. So and by the time we get into the actual content, there's videos when more explanation is needed. Some of the activities ask students to do some independent research and on specific websites and share as groups and then come together as a class where I kind of guide the discussion, make sure we all understood. But it actually helped me introduce more topics. It helped to cover some ideas that weren't really in the textbook or anything that I would be using. And I think it helped. The students were able to follow along. I don't think there were really any lessons that the students got lost or overwhelmed in. By having it across 10, 11 lessons, there's enough content that one single thing is just kind of a very specific focus. We go deep on that for one class, and then there's more content in the next one. So I think for teachers that don't have science or religion backgrounds, the religion is really worked out throughout and very thoughtfully. And some of the best ways that I bring religion into my classroom. As for the science backgrounds, I think just going over the facilitator guide, maybe doing everything yourself beforehand, watching the videos, looking at the handouts. None of it was particularly difficult, and just to review how much information is provided there is, for me, it was more than enough to be able to understand and facilitate the lesson. I think there's also lots of references within the work as well, so I think it's very easy for teachers to kind of find more information as they go through it.
Diane, I have a couple of questions that are coming in that I think would be great for you to answer. So one is just very practical. About how many hours does it take to invest into this course?
Great. So for each session for the high school curriculum is allocated to be about 55 minutes max for the most part. So that would be about 11 hours of just pure facilitation to a classroom and wouldn't include any prep time. So I would say likely between 11 to 20 hours total. Of course, there's also, I've mentioned we have facilitator trainings that you can be part of. Those run about an hour long, and you're welcome to join those as often as you would like. So yeah, I would say maybe about 20 hours total, and that's if you use the entire curriculum, the full track. You can also use one of the 3 individual tracks. Those are between 4 to 5 sessions each, so that would cut that time in about half, somewhere between 5 to 10 hours total.
And then kind of related to that as well, regarding timing, if somebody, and this was asked by Christina, if they don't have all of the time, is there a recommendation of which sessions you can combine, or which ones might be best to abbreviate even more, and how to scale it back a little and still be effective.
Right. Yeah, I've through the pilot program, we saw a number of sites do some really creative modifications, and one of them, not a school but a diocese, modified to have the sessions run over a series of days once a month over the course of, I think, the fall. So about 3 months. And what they ended up doing was they split it into 3 days. So one day for spirituality and ecology, one day for simple living, one day for the social action and civic love. And so they just sort of combined they reviewed all of the activities for each of those sessions, chose the ones that they felt would be most resonant to their group, and then just did it in a sort of half-day program, paired it with a meal, and then just sort of had an open reflection time after the meal. So that it would be, you know, sort of a shortish half-day program, but basically taking up the whole day. Now, that might not be possible in a classroom setting. So my suggestion for that is to really think about what is the type of learning or the goal that you would have in your community? Is it rooting in the spirituality and ecology? Is it deepening in that tradition? And if so, then just do the spirituality and ecology program. And within that, it can be pretty easily modified. So, for example, I ran through that introduction to Homemakers. Maybe you choose, you know, a few activities. Maybe it's just the Genesis story that you want to delve into. And then take a look at the other spirituality and ecology tracks. And maybe there's just a few activities there that you would want to meld together. Now, if what you're finding in your community is that really there is more of a need to bridge the science, climate science, and the faith piece, then I'd say focus on the sustainability and simple living. And those sessions, as Vincent mentioned, really look into, we sort of orient towards the elements. And so there's a session on air, water, and various aspects of pollution and climate justice that are oriented towards those elements. And so you could maybe choose one that is particularly resonant to your community. Maybe your community has been experiencing the effects of wildfire and smoke. And so you'd want to bring attention to air, or maybe there's something water related that you'd want to bring to the attention and bring into prayer as a community. So I would say focus on that. The the social action and civic love is for the community that is like ready to be mobilized and activated. And that entire session, those sessions really build towards an action that takes place after the tracks are completed. And that could be something like we've seen schools implement composting or recycling programs. It could be a day of advocacy and action, maybe reaching out to local legislators or researching and looking at local initiatives to raise awareness around. Those are some options. That segment definitely is not one that you can skip out on, right? As part of the organizing process, you sort of can't just like come in and modify as easily. We really want that one to be rooted in discernful action and prayer. So that is the one session that I think should really be oriented to make the most time around. However, as a whole, we would love to see homemakers really mobilize towards action in all of these communities. So if there are ways to continue to think through how to utilize what you're learning in this curriculum and make it applicable in your setting, that's really important. We want to see this learning take action and root in the world. So sort of long answer to a question, Christina, but I'm happy and I'm available to speak a little bit more in depth in your particular community about what modifications can be made. I'm always available for that. So feel free to reach out if there's anything more specifically that I could share.
Yeah, and I might just be able to add a little bit as teacher and modifying them, and the lessons, you know, we keep saying the tracks and things, they are organized already. They're kind of grouped together into these 2 or 3 tracks or units. And the focuses are kind of clear there about like the religion, the science, the action. And I found last year going through the lessons, the whole facilitator guide, the PowerPoint, you're talking about 7 or 8 pages to read through. So it's very simple to kind of beforehand read through. If the timing starts to go slow, I had marked, this is like the second discussion, maybe we won't get to that one, or this is the third reading in this lesson, maybe we won't get to that one. So it's not hard to kind of go through beforehand and think about what kind of stuff maybe I don't do, or I could even see if you had longer, like my class is 75 minutes, we could maybe combine 2 sessions into one day, depending on what we were trying to get out of it or how many days we could allocate toward this. But I found them, they're very short to just read through and think about, and pull activities from one to the other. That worked well, and I think they're grouped together. There's 3 or 4 lessons, but also when I was saying that teachers, you have everything you need to understand it. The students kind of follow along. They're self-contained. That also makes them very easy, very portable to use. So you can use one here, use one there. You don't have to necessarily like do them back to back or all together at once. They do kind of work alone, and they can fit together in other ways too. So I think just looking at all of them and starting to think of ways I could do one this month, one next month, and slowly bring it to the classroom. It's not like a replacement for a whole curriculum or anything. It's just a very nice addition and kind of ready to go and has everything you need. And if you do one lesson or you do 2 lessons, or you do all 12, it was fun. It does work well.
Awesome. Thank you, Vincent. And another question from Don. Any advice for introducing this to a parish pastor and then parishioners? So Diana, maybe you could speak on some people who pilot it at a parish.
Yeah, great. Yeah. We provide a whole other, I sort of went through the different tracks. So we do offer a track specifically for parishes or small groups. The main difference with those sessions is that it's much more conversation oriented. So you'll see less like activities and more discussion based orientation to the session. But as a whole, yes, this is very well applied in parishes. We had a number of sites that ran this in the church community. We provide a template flyer that you could use so to bring in parishioners. You really just need a space to gather. Ideally, some like audio visual equipment that's helpful to go along with the slides, but even the slides are not totally necessary for you to have these discussions. Really, the heart of the curriculum are the activities and the prayer that's taking place. So I think the one thing that you would really need is a facilitator who will walk through these sessions with you. And maybe that's you, Don, or somebody else within your community who could take these sessions and enact them. But with the facilitator guide, we just sort of name out what the various activities and even provide some scripts so that you lead the conversation in community and as a whole. So you'll need a space, a facilitator, ideally some audio visual equipment, but even just having a group, a small group between 2 to 15 people, higher 2 is welcome. Although I do think these sessions work better or best with smaller groups between 10 to 15, just to really allow for the small group sharing and the conversations to be held in place. But if there are further questions around that, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to support.
Thank you, Diana. Are there any other questions? Now's the time to add them to the Q&A. And Laura, you might have some stuff to add.
I just want to thank all of you. Feel free to add more questions as we go. I do want to send you the survey. If you joined us late, the survey is shared with our speakers, and us at NCEA are very excited to hear your feedback on this session. Also, if you are participating live or later watching this asynchronously, you too can get a survey get the completion, a certificate of completion, and just fill out that survey, share your email, and we will make sure you get that. And just what a wonderful program, very comprehensive. It really is a whole program, as it's called Homemakers. But also it's very valuable insight and reflection. And I love that. How often do you get to communicate with the writers and the people working so closely with it? And it sounds like you're taking a lot of feedback. So we applaud you for that, and we're really happy to be able to help share the information in this very well-rounded program. So we thank you for that.
Laura.
All right. It doesn't look like we have any more questions, but feel free to reach out, and I'd also be happy to connect you with any of our speakers today. Thank you, Diana and Vincent and Kayla, and everybody else. And remember, the best have is each other. So have a great day.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.